get is, yeah, I don't know anything about racing. This is true. You're right. You're in the wrong show.
Yeah.
You're watching the wrong show if you want to hear like super engineer stuff.
Hello and welcome back to Hitting the Apex. Bish joined by Evan as always. Evan, how's it going, man?
Good day early. It's interesting being here on a Monday, but we got the race fresh in our minds, so I guess that's going to be an advantage for us.
Yes, and our fans, aka your family, they find us. So
We always do.
The Max was on top. We got a lot to get into. It was a fun race, but I guess we can start by looking a little bit at the predictions. So Carly, as she alluded to, predicted Max would win, Lando second. So she got the top two. Then Kimmy third. That did not happen. He DNF'd. Oscar was third. So she got him inverted. If she had said Oscar third, Kimmy DNF, she would have nailed it perfectly.
Yep.
You had Oscar winning. I had Lando winning. We were both wrong. You did have Lando second, so you got that one.
I was going to say mine were exactly flipped. I had Max in third.
True.
If I would have flipped those all the way around, it would have been perfect.
True. And
but I did put Colapinto over Gasly, which looked pretty good for a while. But
I mean, Colapinto had a rough week, and we're going to talk about that too. And anyway, I have some thoughts on that. But I had George Russell DNF. Wrong Mercedes.
Definitely wrong Mercedes.
And then Brandon had Lando, then George, then Kimmy has his top three. So Carly definitely the closest. And like you said, you inverted the order there. The chat filled up while I was looking at the other screen. So shout out to Jane as always. And yeah, Carly was definitely the closest this week. I don't know how much crap you're gonna get for that at home, Evan, but
anytime Max does good like that, she always calls it out on me. But the funny part about it is I always know everything that's gonna happen before she does because she watches the race on delay. So I'm sitting here waiting for the phone call to be like, hey, Max won, and I don't get nothing. So I call her back and I say, hey, have you watched? She's like, oh, I'm only on lap 20. The race has been over for like an hour. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic.
Well, it's her week to shine here. So as we allude to, Max won with a opening corner overtake sweeping around the outside of Oscar. What were your thoughts on that? I guess we should point out that Oscar qualified first, Max second, George Russell third, and Lando fourth. And George Russell actually got a great jump off the start, but Oscar was kind of in his way and looked like he had the first corner kind of held, and then Max just sent it around the outside, swept past both of them because, heading into that corner, George Russell looked like he was ahead of Max, and Max might drop to third. Instead, he swept around both. It's an S turn, swept around both of them, and took the lead, and that was it. He never let it go. What do you think of the overtake? And kind of everything that happened on that first corner, because that was kind of the determining factor for the race.
It really was, and it was a great move by Max. Not to take anything away from him, you could really tell that Oscar was kind of distracted by the fact that George did have that great launch. George was an absolute rocket ship off the line. He had a good probably 5 to 7 miles per hour faster than both of those other cars, and Oscar had to defend it. And as he's defending for that, you open up that window for Max to sweep around the outside. Now, what made it that better for him was on that second part of that chicane, the side that Max was on was the actual racing line. So he got himself in a position to where coming out of that first chicane, he was going to be, in a good spot to get the grip, to get the momentum, and to pull himself away, going into the next part. But then after that, he really did do a great job throughout the entire race. He kind of got a little, lucky when it came to the VSCs and stuff like that we'll talk about a little bit later. But overall, he did do a very good job, positioning himself and getting past and really being what we always know of Max Verstappen, which is that he's going to be aggressive. He's not going to, if he sees a window, even if it's the tightest window in the world, he's going to go for it. Nobody else really has shown that they do the same thing. Maybe a little bit off Oscar's side this year, but overall, this is something that we've seen consistently from Max Verstappen, over the past pretty much since he's been in Formula One. If there's an opening that is there, he's going to go for it. He's going to take advantage of it. And then that car really looked good this weekend. Even though we never really see that second Red Bull do great. Yuki ended up in 10th. At least he was in the points, but overall, just Max in that car is something different. So. How about you?
Yeah,
what did you think about that first
he
turn?
started from the pit lane because you remember he had that huge crash in qualifying.
And then to bring it back to 10th was impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Max took the race in the first corner. I do think, like you said, I totally agree with you, actually, that like Oscar was kind of watching George Russell's mirrors because he got that shot up the line, but he needed to move over and block Max off. You're not worried about George Russell.
Yeah.
You're worried about Max as your competitor. Like and as you said, and as I said in the broadcast, by the way, do we know why there were different broadcasters this week?
I know that like there's a couple different ones that come in for like a couple of the Italian races. Devaney, I know comes in every once in a while as a color commentator and stuff like that. But
not that they did a good job. I was just curious. I didn't see why that we didn't get the normal.
No, just sometimes when they go to the different tracks, like especially in Italy or places, when they go to France or something like. No, I guess they don't go to France anymore, do they?
Nope.
Really? So when they go to Italy, when they go to Australia, they'll have somebody else come in. They'll have a former Australian driver or something like that, and they like to do stuff like that, especially with the color commentators. I really like the Devaney, the Italian guy that they have come on. He's got a lot of personality, and especially like in the pre-race shows and stuff like that. He's got a good amount of insight on the racing side of it, but also, he's got a good personality. It's a good mix for a good show. So it was good to see him this week. You got to sit there. You could hear him, talk great about Kimi, how much it would be so great for the Italian fans to see Kimi, and obviously we know how that turned out. So, yeah. But how about you? What did you think about that first turn and everything, like we were saying?
Yeah, no, I think you were spot on. I think Max knew he's on the actual racing line. Like if you're taking that in a normal course of the race, you're where Max is, not where Oscar is. So Oscar needed to move over, and he actually had enough of a jump to do that.
Yeah.
And so he should have just moved over and blocked Max out, and then not even worried about George Russell because first of all, like you're not worried about George Russell overall. Like even if he passes you, you have a way faster car than Mercedes, and you also, if you finish ahead of Max and Lando, that helps your championship period.
Yeah.
George Russell's not winning the championship, so. You have two competitors for the championship, and if you move over and block Max, you're going to keep them both. They're both on that line. You're going to keep them both behind you. So I thought it was a little bit of probably a poor plan going into that corner, and then he brake a little early there, and
basically let just Max.
Can't give an inch to Max Verstappen. He'll take the foot, man, and that's what he did. Yeah. But it was Max easily could have lost it there. So it's a great. He's one of the best drivers in history for a reason. So you gave him an opening, and he swept through there when most drivers would have probably wrecked both cars. But he's skilled enough to actually keep it on that line at that speed with that pace. It's something that he made look easy that is incredibly difficult, and it's not just the guts to go for it. But again, most drivers couldn't stick it at that speed, carrying that much speed into that corner, that tight on the line, and not at least cause an incident or make contact or anything. It was super impressive, but Oscar needs to have just better awareness of who his challengers are. If he had swept across, because again, he got the better jump off the line. If Max got a better jump than him, there's nothing you can do because then you're kind of more side by side and you can't just knock him off the track. But when he had a better jump, he should have moved over and blocked him. He had the opportunity to do that. He didn't do it, and then open the door a little bit, and Max does what Max does, which is just sprinted through that door and into the lead, and then just
ran away with it.
Yeah, just kind of held it. Like you said, the margins are all screwed up because Max got really lucky with the safety car. The other thing that happened is interested to get your take on this. So pretty early in the race, the mediums, which is what most people started on, we spent a lot of time talking about how they have new tire contents. The mediums are actually the softs from last year. They started going off pretty quickly. And some of the, there's some in midfield fighting. We should say Lando kind of picked his way through the field and got up into third. And then George Russell pitted, his tires were gone. Leclerc's tires were gone. And Leclerc pitted and actually undercut Norris. I don't know if you had a chance to watch like the team radio today, but Leclerc undercut Norris, which is why one, they pit Piastri like almost immediately to try to undercut Max, but also to protect from Leclerc and Russell, who had pitted early because they were worried about getting undercut. But actually, the reason Lando stayed out was because Leclerc had already got him. So he'd spent all that time kind of picking his way through the field and then immediately got undercut. So they came on the radio and said, look, Leclerc already undercut you. We might as well run long and see if these tires come back. And they actually did.
Yeah.
But what did you think of McLaren's strategy? Because they brought Piastri in really early and it to his detriment.
Yeah, I mean, it really was to his detriment, just like you said. So it was really interesting with the tires this weekend. It was the first time I think I've seen in a long time that we can even go back into qualifying. Like, we talked about how George was in third place. He did that on a medium.
Yeah.
Like, he was on a medium tire in Q3 qualifying in the top three. Like you never see that. All these guys, they always jump on those soft tires, and they try to run the fastest lap. They use those soft tires to their advantage. But really, I mean, we know that last year's soft was this year's medium, so maybe they were just more comfortable with that. Maybe those held on for the lap a little bit better than these brand new C6s that they wanted to strap on for this year. At this racetrack, and really they didn't work out. I mean, yes, Max and Oscar both, ran, the fastest laps in qualifying with the C6s on. But I mean, could you imagine if they would have put those mediums on and they would have ran faster? I mean, I think they just did it out of reflex. I think the teams just did it out of, hey, they are the softest, they got to be the best. But I mean, you saw consistently. I mean, wasn't this the first race this year that both of the Aston Martins were in Q3, and they did that on mediums.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
so I mean, I think this experiment with the C6 tire really didn't work out in Pirelli's favor this week, because you could just tell that those tires just fell off immediately. So going into the race, those mediums did fall off a lot quicker because they were technically, I guess you could say, the softs from last year. And so because of that, they fell off a lot quicker than we expected them to. And the hards are really the tire that showed out. And like you had said, Lando did go long with that tire, and so did Max. They both went long on those tires and were the quickest, cars out on that track until, the other teams were putting on the fresher hards and stuff like that. And then they became the faster cars. So it was like you always hope for these strategies to play out in certain ways, with these teams that we want to see good racing, and we want to see everything, play out to where the strategies matter more than safety cars. But really, that safety car, a lap earlier, Lando would have been right up there with Max for the rest of the race, and there wouldn't have even been that whole drama at the end with the final safety car. But realistically, it's what we expected from Imola. We always, see that there's going to be accidents. There's always going to be incidents because it is such a tight track. It is such a track that is, hard for overtaking. But these guys still try to go for it because there are opportunities that can be had, even if they are tight opportunities. It's not like what we're going to go into later on next week, where there really isn't any opportunities to make passes on the next track that they're coming up to. But at least here there's a slight chance in that first chicane, in that second chicane, like we saw with Lando, going past George Russell, going past Oscar, like we saw with Max at the beginning of the race, and like we saw with a lot of other drivers, throughout the race. There was a lot of good moves up and down the field. Lewis Hamilton had, I think a pretty decent race in the grand scheme of things with where they qualified. And, we can go into that as well, Ferrari we thought was dead in the water, getting knocked out of Q2. And the fact that they came back and finished out so well really showed that they had a decent strategy here as well. Talking
Yeah,
about
they had a good
strategy.
strategy, and it's actually what you. I think one of the reasons they were knocked down in Q2 is I think you're nailing all these points here. Like they, the right tire for qualifying was probably the medium.
Yeah.
And they tried to qualify in the softs in Q2, and like I said, Austin Martin actually, Stroll and Alonso knocked them out because they were sitting in ninth and 10th, and then Alonso and Stroll set faster times, and that knocked the Ferraris out, and they did it on mediums. And mentally, it's just like you said, it's got to be the soft's got to be the fastest tire over one lap, and it just wasn't. And I agree that tire didn't work, but I honestly don't know what the goal was of going to a softer compound. But if it was to force more pit stops, that part worked because you couldn't really run on a medium hard for the whole race. Like you still needed a second pit stop. But the timings of the safety car certainly helped Max. The first one hurt Lando. The second one helped him. The first one was really awful timing, which kind of ended the race. He came out of the pit, and then
that's when the safety car hit.
Behrman, I believe, had to pull off, or it was the Ocon, right?
The first one was Ocon.
Yeah, the Haas, but it pulled off, and then immediately VSC Max got a free pit stop after Lando had just taken the penalty of a full pit stop, so that kind of just completely screwed him, and kind of screwed the race. And then, with the second safety car, a lot of drivers pitted. Some couldn't because they're out of position. Actually, there was a really interesting, again, this was on the radio, a really interesting interchange between both the Ferrari engineers and their drivers. So Lewis was on the mediums at that point. Remember, he started on the hards, he went to mediums, so he'd only stopped once. And he was happy with his tire and said, I don't need to change. These tires are still good. And they said, no, box. It was one of the few times I've heard Ferrari just like, we know what we're doing. Pit. Yeah. And they were talking back and forth. He's like, no, I think I'm good. I don't really want to pit. And they said, no, you're pitting. And that was it. Like, he pit. Meanwhile, Leclerc's engineer picked up some of that. Leclerc wanted to pit, and his team was saying you cannot pit. And the reason is he'd already used his hards. So he didn't have another fresh set of tires. So, like, the only thing he had that was new was softs. And they're like, the softs are not going to make it to the other race. He's like, you don't have – this is the tires you currently have are the only ones that will finish the race.
Yeah.
So the other options they had were, like, used mediums that already had run for 11 laps. They didn't have – and they were telling him all this information. And he's like, I still want a box. And then they're like, all right, fine, you can come. But then Hamilton, again, they're all talking individually. There's some coordination, but not full coordination.
Yeah.
Hamilton actually pits in front of Leclerc, and Leclerc's like, it's because they said, box, we'll put the softs on. That's all we got. He was going to pit, and then Hamilton was right in front of him, pits, and he just goes straight past the pit, doesn't pit, and he says, I'm not pitting. He pitted, I don't want to double stack and lose a bunch of places. So that's why he ends up staying out on his used hards. Hamilton gets new tires, and obviously ends up passing him and a couple other guys and getting up into fourth, and was actually running Piastri down at the end. Because very similarly, Lando was able to pit for fresh tires later. Piastri had older tires on, so Lando was able to pass him and get second. So yeah, a lot of the timings of that really interesting. But it was definitely interesting to see Ferrari just decisively say, "Look, we know what we're doing. We're not going to debate this with Lewis." But then with Leclerc, it was like a full lap of debating whether he should pit or not. And then they ultimately agreed, okay, if you want to pit, we'll pit. And then he didn't pit because Lewis was in the box. So kind of interesting strategy there. I know there's a lot of talk about, like, because obviously Lando had fresher tires than Oscar and was faster. Should they have swapped the places and kind of given him a chance? Because by the time he got past Oscar after, I think it was like 2 laps.
It was over.
On. What are your thoughts there? Do you think they should have let him through, or what do you think they should?
Well, I mean, Lando said that, and when they were driving around behind the safety car, Lando said, "Hey, I got the fresher tires. He literally said, I can see Oscar's tires. They're gone." So these guys know what these tires look like. They know when they've picked up too much garbage, when they're pitted, when they're when they're losing their grip. They have a distinctive look to them. They're not shiny. They're not smooth. They're rough. They have these marks on them. So Lando's in the perfect position to look at Oscar's rear tires and look and see that he really doesn't have that grip, or he is at least losing that grip that Lando has on his fresher tires. So Lando, came on the radio, like I said, and basically said, "Hey, his tires are gone. If we want to catch Max, let me buy." And they said, "No, you guys got to fight for it. You guys gotta go up against each other, because that's how they've been playing it all year." And it really did make it to where Max drove away from them, got that lead, and then Lando, the best he could, tried to drive him down after he finally got past Oscar. But by the time he got past Oscar, he wore away his tires some more and stuff like that, because Oscar didn't just let him go by either. I mean, they fought for 2 or 3 laps.
It was good racing, I thought.
Yeah, I thought it was very good racing between the two, and very respectful of him. There's opportunities in those chicanes to where we saw it with, I think it was Leclerc and Gasly, where Gasly tried to go past Leclerc, and Leclerc kind of pinched him and got him off onto the gravel, and he was riding off road for a little bit. So that can happen at this track because of how tight it is.
One of the things I like about the track, I do agree. I know at one point in the commentary they said, these guys are so used to driving. Again, there's safety issues and the G-force impact of getting stuck in gravel when you're going full speed is dangerous.
Yeah.
And, the barriers are closer here. That's why, you saw both Colapinto and Yuki in qualifying have really bad accidents. Like, there's a reason tracks aren't designed like this now, but it does make for better racing and more demands on being quality, and not just sending it in every corner knowing there's like a runoff that you can just recover it. And there were some penalties paid, like you said. You dip a tire off, it's not onto gravel, it's not onto a tarmac, it's onto gravel, it's onto grass, it's onto onto the catch area, or you hit the wall, and it's just that penalty did force them to drive. But I actually thought made for better overtaking, because what we see at some of these other tracks where there's just there's essentially a big square of pavement with a tractor on it, you can just run off. Is you'll see this guy's going past me. Yeah, this guy's going past me, but I can just hang it outside off the track and stick with him, and you can't do that here. And I think you could see why it doesn't, because those crashes were scary, and it's dangerous stuff. Obviously the safety of the driver is the most important thing. That's why they went away from doing circuits like this and now have the more, wide runoff areas and all this stuff. So you can kind of see why they do it, but also the racing is way better in these situations. So, it's kind of a little one or the other. But the racing was just, I thought the demands on the drivers to actually do their job well was much higher. And go ahead.
I was going to say they did change a few corners this year at Imola, where they did add the gravel traps to a couple of the different spots. I know at the top of the hill where the chicane is after Aqua Minerale, they did add a gravel trap there, which a couple of the drivers did kind of get caught out on. You could see coming through that last chicane, where a lot of times the drivers would go flat out trying to get through that really tight chicane. They would run wide and then be okay. In years past, this year, they did kind of get caught out in the gravel trap. I think also in the final couple turns before it was just grass. Now there's gravel there. And if I'm not mistaken, the spot where Yuki actually went off too, before it used to be just grass. Now they did add that gravel into that spot there, and that kind of made him dig in and end up flipping that car during qualifying. So, think about it. If that was just grass before, he would have hit that barrier, a lot harder than even he hit it just then, with the gravel. The gravel really slowed him down. Yes, it did make him flip, but, I don't know. I'd rather flip going 60 miles per hour than go straight into a wall at 170.
Yeah, and especially with the halo, protects when you flip now, which has come in handy multiple times since I know it's controversial at the time. Now it's like, what were we arguing about? 'Cause again, like some of these would have been very bad.
I mean,
Dangerous
we would have lost Lewis Hamilton if it wasn't for the hammer.
When Max would not that yes, when Max
Max almost decapitated him in Monza.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's been a lot of situations where the Halo has really saved people's lives, and that really showed it, especially in the in-car view. They replayed that video multiple times this weekend, showing how that flip actually ended up, and you could clearly see that Halo really helped out. But again, we just talking about what we were talking about, the gravel pit really helped out as well. Even though it did cause the flip, it did also slow him down a good amount, which helped out in making sure that he was safe. And that's, a great point by you that it's really making for more technical racing around here, because there is that penalty of them running off.
Yeah. And just back to the Lando Oscar thing, I don't know if there was an opportunity for them to let him by, because you can't do it before the start because you can't pass under the safety car. No. So you have to wait till the start finish line. And Leclerc got a great jump off of that. It was like he was never gonna pass Lando to hold it, like he didn't have the pace, so Lando would have taken the spot back and it wouldn't have really mattered. But he got a great jump off the start, just that first sector of the first lap, where there was not room for Oscar to pull over and let Lando through, and by the time that lap was over, Max was gone. So I don't think they were going to swap them. Like you said, they've been pretty clear on that. We're not doing that until it gets to a phase where one driver clearly establishes that they're the top driver, and neither of them have done that.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the right approach at this point. If you start playing those games this early, it's hard to keep both drivers engaged, and they need both drivers engaged. So.
Yeah.
I
also, I was going to say
they really had an opportunity to do that swap, or it would have mattered.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. The other thing about it is where Max decided to start off that push. You got to remember in Formula One, the safety car will peel off into the pit lane, and then that starting driver has a decision that they can start, and they're basically the one that's starting the lap. Max started that lap in the middle of those last two corners, which is a long run from that first chicane. I think if Max had waited and gone up to the line to start, or gone up to halfway through that starting straight, then that would have been a little bit better for the McLarens, because they could have maybe made that decision, made the swap at that first chicane, and then let Lando go hunting for Max there, and they would have been a little bit better. But you got to remember that's a long distance from that last corner up to that first chicane. That's the only DRS zone in the entire track. That's the longest straight or relative straightaway in the entire track. I know it curves to the right and then to the left, but overall, for these cars, it's a straightaway. Yeah, they're full throttle. So Max really, played it smart in where he was going to start it up, because of the fact that he knew that they were going to have to go past that last corner, which they're basically right there with each other, waiting for Max to make that decision, and then B, he had that long straightaway going into that first chicane where he could pull away just a little bit and make that decision whether they were going to do that swap, which again they decided not to do, and hindsight's 2020. If they would have made the swap and Lando would have caught him, we would have said that there was a genius move, but they didn't do it.
I don't know how, but again, Max took off so far down. I don't think even if they swapped at the end of lap one, when there was enough safety space to do it where Leclerc wouldn't have pounced.
Yeah.
He'd already opened up 2-3 seconds. I don't know.
I think that might be the reason why they didn't do it, was because they saw Max was so far ahead that they were like, it's not you're not going to catch him either way. But that's the point that I was trying to make, is that, the fact that he started where he started really allowed him to get that advantage as far as he did.
Yeah, and I think it's another case of Max understanding what competition's up to and being smart about it, because normally you don't want to start that early, because you're not allowed to speed up and then slow down. Once you go, you have to. Yeah. Otherwise you'll get a penalty. But he knew Piastri on worn tires
wasn't going to get the grip.
Wasn't going to be able to navigate those last few corners well. Yeah. So he was able to actually open up a little bit of a gap even before he hit the start-finish straight, where if he was slow to the line and kind of backing them up all the way, that's the tires are less important in the straight line than they are on the through the corner. So just again, knowing it's competition, knowing no one's allowed to overtake before the start finish line. So it's not like Lando can come through, before they hit the start finish line, that he can, open up a little bit of a gap even under safety car by accelerating earlier. It was over. he handled this whole race was just expertly driven by Max. The next question,
really
he's definitely my driver of the day. He was brilliant.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you about that. I'm being a Lando stand. I'm going to say he did a good job coming from fourth up to second. You got to give props to the Ferrari guys too. I mean, that really was a masterclass when it came to decision making. They really did do something that we're not used to them doing, which is making good decisions when it comes to strategy. But to get them both up there, top six was really good. And then we can also give a shout out to my guys that I think are right up there with the Ferraris, and it really shows, which are those two Williams, man. Those Williams cars are fast, bro. I don't know why we hate on them so much, but those Williams cars are fast, and I think that they're gonna keep on showing, that they might be the class coming, in the next couple of years. They might be one of those teams that we're talking about as a front runner sooner rather than later going into next year. There's a lot of money behind them. There's a lot of good development behind them.
Yeah, there is, and just to put some context to it. So this is the driver standings now. Oscar still leading from Lando. Lando picked up a couple of points on that. Max right there too. It's a 3-horse race right now, all within one race distance. So any kind of DNF can fully jumble this. But yeah, I think we're going to see those three kind of battling it out for a while still. And then from the drivers, not the same story because the second Red Bull can't do anything. But yeah, the McLaren continue to pull a larger lead. Mercedes still hanging on second, just really honestly because George Russell just consistently scores in the top 5, and they're just banking those points. And Kimi has been very good. Obviously, DNF, not his fault this weekend, but he's also been very good at kind of banking those top 5, top 6, top 7, and just add that up when the Ferraris are so up and down. The Williams are coming better now, but they're still pretty far down. They did not score a lot of points at the beginning of the season. I think Carlos took a couple of races to even score. Yeah. And even now, when they're competitive with the Ferrari right now, even then they're still finishing behind them on net, so they're kind of like dripping further behind. But yeah, Mercedes has done a good job of kind of just consistently scoring, never really threatening the top, but managing to be second in the constructors because of that.
And they would have been higher this week if it wasn't for Kimi DNFing.
Yeah, didn't have that issue. So yeah, Red Bull's a one-man band right now, and that's good enough for third. But yeah, I don't think there's going to be much drama on the constructors this year. Their two drivers pretty consistently finishing the top 3 for one team, and that'll give you a constructors title pretty easily.
For sure, that is for sure.
All right, so on to, I guess, the most historic track, maybe the one that's most derided as well in terms of race quality, but Monaco.
The classic Formula One track that everybody loves to go to and see and watch, but nobody actually likes to watch the race because it's basically just a procession of cars driving around at top speed and nobody passes each other because these cars are so big and wide that even if you try to, you can't fit them between or next to each other along the entire length of the track.
Yeah, pretty much. That is the that's Monaco in a nutshell. There theoretically should be overtaking opportunities, and maybe at one point there were. They're no longer.
The cars were half the size.
Yeah, and you can actually, you can see that when they do side by sides of even from 15 years ago to now, how much wider the cars are, and this circuit does not really allow for overtaking them, so it is a bit processional. Now they have made one. So obviously this is the circuit. I think everyone's familiar with this. This is the classic F1 race, and frankly, if it wasn't with the history and like you said, the race everyone loves to go to and the pomp and circumstance, this race wouldn't be on the calendar anymore because it's pretty terrible to watch. With that said, they've tried to spice it up a little bit with as we look at the tire selection here, because in addition to, yes, we've got these the C6s back, but they are requiring 2 pit stops in the usage of 3 compounds, I believe, or 2 different compounds on 2 pit stops, dry or wet. So either way, they have to stop twice. So if it's raining, you still have to stop twice, even if like your tires are good. That's a rarity. And yeah, they have to use multiple compounds. So either 1 dry, 1 wet, 2 dry. It's not supposed to rain on Sunday, so probably a moot point with that. But
Yeah.
they will have to use at least 2 compounds, and they will have to stop twice. So how do you think that will obviously that's an attempt to address on what we're talking about, which is to take it out of a processional race where you essentially, it's so hard to pass. It doesn't, you just, all you're doing is watching pit windows, and wherever you pit into, you're going to finish. So
Yeah.
so now with that extra pit stop, maybe teams can get a little creative with it. What do you think of this move? Are you in favor of it, and how do you think it'll impact the race?
Well, we always talk about pit stops help out, when it comes to strategy calls. It forces the hands of these teams to have to, make these decisions. Now, what is probably going to happen, most likely is going to happen, is that these teams are just going to be putting under yellows because, like we were talking about, this track is very tight. This track is very narrow. It's very fast as well. These cars will get up to good top speed, or maybe not quite as fast as you see at Monaco, but they will get, or at Monza, I'm sorry, but you will see them get up very fast, and on these tight corners, there's gonna be an accident. It's not one of these tracks that it's
Yeah.
oh, I wonder if there is, or there might not be. It might be a clean. No, there's going to be an accident at some point during this race. We got 6 rookies in the field. They're driving these wide cars in these narrow tracks. There's going to be an accident at some point. And realistically, that's when we're going to see the pit. There could be.
Do you think teams will hang it out for 2 safety cars?
I mean, I don't think that they're going to have to hang it out. I think it's going to be like
There's like
clockwork.
2 accidents in the first 3 laps. Would you just pit twice and just
Yes,
done your mandatories? They know it's
100%. I'd put the hards on after the second crash, and I would run the rest of the race, and when everybody else pits, I'll pass them because that's just what's going to happen. There's going to be these accidents, and there always is, there always will be until they reduce the size of these cars, which is what they're doing, or if they do something that I suggested last week that we talked about, that if you want, I will bring up, because I think that would be the one change in Monaco that would make the biggest difference and would make this weekend an amazing weekend there.
Yeah, go for it. So throw your suggestion out there again in case people didn't hear it last week.
Well, they couldn't. We talked about it afterwards. Remember, we talked about
that was post show. All right, man.
Yeah, that was post show. We talked about this post show.
In fact, I will. Here we go. Go for it.
All right. So my suggestion for the Monaco Grand Prix is change it completely. Don't make it a Grand Prix anymore. With the cars the way they are, how big they're, even with how big they're going to be next year, make it a time trial. Make this a special weekend. Make this all the pomp and circumstance that Monaco is, all the parties, all the flashiness, all the stuff that happens around it. Make it a time trial. Qualifying is the best part of this weekend. Make the whole weekend about that. Have them go out, do 2 laps around there. Their average time will be their time. Let them go one at a time out on the track. They'll have a warm-up lap, and then their 2 fastest laps out there, and then average the time out for those 2 fastest laps, and that's where they finish the race. You could do it till there's 20 drivers. It takes what was it, a minute and a half around the track or something like that? I forgot what it had said as the record lap time around there. But it takes a couple minutes each time. So each one of these drivers,
minute 12.
So you think about it, a minute 12. You got 20 drivers. That's basically 3 to 5 minutes per driver with the warm up lap, and then with the 2 laps, you're talking that's perfect timing for good the same amount of time as a normal race. You have these guys go out there, they set these fast laps, and we get to see the talent of these drivers. There's other racing series that do similar things like this, like Rally, where they have the special stages and they let these cars go out there and basically just blast through these streets, and you get to see the best drivers do the most incredible laps around these tracks, and it you're not hampered by the fact that it's a full race. You're not hampered by the fact that these cars are going up against each other, and there might be an accident because somebody twitches the car to the wrong side, or somebody doesn't see somebody else coming up behind them. Lean into it even more. Give them a C7 tire. Give them an even softer tire. Let them go even crazier with the aero for this 1 week. Let them do some crazy stuff with these cars to where it's a one-off special event at Monaco. It's a Monaco time trial. It's the Monaco, special stage. It's the Monaco, whatever it may be, but that it's something that's different because these cars just don't work here. They haven't worked here for a while. And it's showing. You look at last year's F2 race here in Prema. You have Berman and Kimi Antonelli. The cars are half the size, and they had one of the best races I've ever seen between two cars around this track. Kimi went to the casino hairpin on the outside of Berman and basically slung it on. You never see two Formula One cars do that anymore. Going into the swimming pool area, they were basically side by side. These cars were. And they're in the F2 cars because they're half the size. There's a track that F2 runs at every single year. I can't remember the name of it. It's some with an M also. I can't remember the name of it. But Formula One used to race there a long time ago, but they don't race there anymore. Only F2 races there now because of the fact that the cars have gotten so big. That's the future that I see happening in Monaco. Yes, they are making the cars a little bit smaller, but they're still not small enough to be able to race, heads up, Macau, that's the name of it, the Macau Grand Prix. The Macau Grand Prix used to be on the Formula One circuit, but they took it off, even though it's a fantastic track because the cars are just too big. That's the future that I see in Monaco. Even with the cars getting a little bit smaller, they're still not small enough to be able to race each other at a track like this. Make it a special event. Make it the pomp and circumstance, the fun times, the parties, the lavish extravagance, the boats, all the people on there. Let that happen, but let it just be the time trial. It would be so much better.
Dissenting opinion from within your family in the chat.
That's fine. She doesn't. When she watches qualifying and says, "Oh my God, qualifying was so amazing," and then watches the race and nobody passes each other the entire race except for in the pits. That's basically what we're talking about.
I just don't see how you factor that into the season though. How do you award points for this thing? It's not a race.
Who qualified first?
Yeah, it's not worth the full race is worth the points. Just do a one lap. That's crazy to give 25 points for doing the fastest lap in a qualifying setting.
Then do half points, do something, but let them still go there. Let it still be the big event that it is. Let them still go race in Monaco, but make it something different because this just isn't working. We'll see it this weekend. Let's see this weekend.
We'll see how this experiment with the forced pit stop does to maybe jumble the field a little bit. But yeah, I don't know what the solution is. I agree with Carly. I think you need to have actual racing. This is not rally this is Formula One, man. It's just they got to figure it out though. The cars have kept getting wider and this track cannot. So that does not meet. I would actually not have an issue with them. I know this is sacrilegious, but dropping it from the calendar. I
wouldn't want to see that.
I would rather see that than an event or a spectacle event versus a race. I don't know. We'll watch them parade around.
Well, now we're gonna watch Saturday. Them do the qualifying. Them do that close up that they do every single year on the turn right around the swimming pool where you see Leclerc's tire rub on the side fence because it's that close to the wall, and we're going to say, oh my God, that was some of the best driving we've ever seen in our life. And then when they get into the race, it's just a wreck fest and only passing because of the pit stops.
Well, there'll be
So
more pit stops.
yeah.
So we got that going for us. In terms of timing, again, we're back on our classic European schedule. So the 23rd, which is Friday. Oh, they switched. Actually, they did switch this because Monaco used to do Thursday, right? And then Saturday, Sunday was a little different always.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I think so.
it's Friday, the 23rd. So 7:30 a.m. practice 1. 11 a.m. practice 2, practice 3 on Saturday at 6:30, qualifying at 10 a.m. on Saturday, and the race Sunday at 9 a.m. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. Definitely want to catch that qualifying, though. All right. We got Brandon, Jeff, Carly has shown up, Jane has shown up. Let's get some predictions out while we get this going. Evan, let's start with you. What are your predictions for this race?
I'm gonna go with the McLarens up front. I think Oscar is gonna take this race. He's just shown that he's been the more aggressive driver. Lando's good here. He's never been great here. This is going to be all about qualifying, and I just don't trust Lando in the qualifying right now. You really can't with what he's shown. Even the last race, even there at Imola, he got up there, he looked pretty decent, and then he just fell off. And you know, you had George Russell on a medium tire be faster than him. So, I think that Oscar's gonna be the one that's gonna qualify the best. I think that you're gonna see him up there with Lando, right behind, and then in third place, I'm gonna go with Leclerc. I think
Wow.
yeah,
With the hometown guy.
I'm gonna go with the hometown guy. He did get the win there last year. We know how fast he is going around that track. He's supremely confident. He has had the worst luck there up until last year, where it was basically nonstop DNFs, or I think in one year it was he wrecked it like on the in lap or the procession lap or whatever it was. The like the car broke down going around the track, going to line up. So it's like he always has something bad until last year, where he finally did get that win there, which was an amazing sight for Formula One and for him as well. So I can see him qualifying third and then ending up in third. And then my prediction for my what's it called, the surprise prediction, is that Max Verstappen is going to be lower at the end of the race than a Williams. A Williams. I'm not going to say which Williams. I'm going to say A Williams.
A Williams.
I say A Williams will beat Max Verstappen. This Red Bull car is very fast. We know that, but it's one Achilles heel that we've seen so far has been slow corners, and this track is primarily only slow corners. So it's going to be very difficult for him to get up there. I don't see him qualifying very highly here. I can, maybe see him, top 5, top 6 qualifying, but I don't think that's a top 3 car around this track. I think, the McLarens are going to be good. I think the Mercedes are going to be good. I think the Ferraris are going to be good. And I just don't think that Red Bull car is good around these slow corners. It's kind of been the Achilles heel of this car. That's why he was so good at Imola, because Imola had a lot more fast corners, only 1 or 2 slow corners. So, we're going to see really how hampered this car is by that Achilles heel going into this weekend. So I'm going to say, I want to say it's going to be Albon, but Carlos Sainz has also shown that he's decent around Monaco as well. But I think one of the Williams is going to be higher at the end of the race than Max Verstappen, however that ends up working out.
Okay, fair enough. And it sounds like your dad has similar ideas of the strength of the Williams, potentially a podium. once you win qualifying points, you're going to win the race. I think this year with the double pit stopping, it could get mixed up a little bit. Timing of safety car, because even in the past, you mentioned it, and I think there'll probably be a higher preponderance of safety cars, as you said, because all the rookies. But in the past, if you've already done your pit stop, safety cars doesn't matter. You're still going to just stay out because you never get a track position. But the required pit stop, it's the second pit stop. It should be a little bit more interesting than hopefully just the qualifying is the race order. So I agree with you on the McLaren strength, but I'm going to reverse them. I think Lando's got to fight back at some point and do something here. I feel like over the course here he's probably been faster, but he keeps making mistakes, which at this track will be game over. But I'm gonna pick him to win the race and Oscar second, and then I'm gonna put Hamilton third. I think that car is coming to him a little bit. He's starting to get more comfortable in it. We've seen him perform a little bit better. And so I think there's going to be a surprise here. I just like in the top three. It could be either the Williams, it could be Hamilton, Leclerc. I think we've been pretty accustomed to the top three are going to be Lando, Max, and Oscar in some order, and so I feel like there's going to be an interloper this time. I'm just not sure who it's going to be. I think someone's going to get caught out by a safety car at the wrong time or be on the wrong part of the track and. We've had issues with the safety car stupidly picking up the wrong car. And in fact, like all of that's in play here, and you cannot recover to overtake it. Also, these teams that like Max, Lando, and Oscar have certainly gotten away with bad strategy calls. Because their car is fast and just make the distance up. Like that was Oscar this weekend end up third. If they erroneously hit him at the wrong time here and drop him back into the pack, he's going to finish like 10th. But this last weekend he was able to just pick his way slowly through the field and catch all the way back up to where he finished on the podium. So I do think someone's going to get caught out somewhere and just like, ooh, we put it the wrong time and there's a crash right after and crap or something. And not sure exactly what it's going to be. My surprise, though, Carly, look away. Max DNF. He has not DNF in a long time. He's taking I think I agree with you. The car's better in fast speed than slow speed corners, but it's also not nearly as fast as he's making it.
Yeah.
And eventually you make that mistake when you're that on edge all the time, which is what he's had to be to keep up with the McLarens. And here, when you make that mistake, you go crash. And I think he'll end up as one of the causes of the safety car.
Carly's got one of the biggest wild cards I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I see that. So Carly's got. Let me put this up on screen for people to see. Carly's got Max, then Charles, then Oscar, and the wild card is no safety cars. I cannot imagine that all of these rookies who could not navigate Australia are going to be able to navigate this track. But we'll see. We'll see. That is a bold prediction, Carly.
That's gonna be great. I might need to take her. I might need to talk to her about putting a wager on that to see if I can see if I can make some money off of that one.
That is I mean, I think I can't imagine all these rookies can navigate. I mean, Liam Lawson's gonna hit something.
Why you got to pick on Liam? Come on.
I mean, he shouldn't be in the sport. That's about it.
Damn.
No, I can't imagine all these rookies are just going to successfully navigate what is, I think it was 73. It's a lot of laps.
Yeah.
78 laps around here without any of the rookies hitting something. So I think we'll help Carly out a little bit here and say accidents means safety car. We're not talking about slight contact and a winglet falls off and they keep driving. That's what we're talking about.
Come on, no, I'm calling anything. Yeah, I gotta win a bet. I gotta make a bet.
No, that's what I'm saying. So we're talking when we say accident, we mean I would say a safety car would be defined. Some then is a safety car. I think because everyone, like you said, they're gonna bump the wall.
Yeah,
that's not an accident. Accident is like something comes off. Right. And you have to stop the race or do a safety car. Red flag, safety car, maybe VSC.
Yeah.
Let's see what the
there's no. I don't think there's VSCs at Monaco.
Yeah, there's really
You really can't do a
VSC,
VSC.
but so we'll have to see what would cause a VSC here. I can't
Yeah.
say there's much of anything. But yeah, I think it's gotta be a safety car inducing. I mean, we're not giving you the win on this if someone taps the wall to wiglet fall off, and that's the only thing that happened.
All
right. Carly's got to be an Ocon and not Lawson. Could be both.
Mm-hmm. Could be both.
All right. Anything else you want to cover here?
I do. One last thing for all of our IndyCar fans in the chat as well. There is some Formula One tie-in this weekend. The highest qualifying car in the Indy 500 just happened yesterday is a Formula One F2 driver, Robert Schwartzman, for a Formula 2 team, Prema. So some of the best teams that we see, or some of the best drivers that we see in Formula One, Charles Leclerc, Kimi Antonelli, some of these rookies that are in there now, Behrman, they all went through Prema in Formula 2. They have started a IndyCar team, and with Robert Schwartzman, one of their F2 drivers, they went out to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and qualified first ahead of guys who have been racing these ovals for many, many, many years. This young Israeli kid went out there and is now leading or is going to lead the pack coming into one of the greatest races of all time in the Indianapolis 500. We do have a great racing weekend this weekend with Monaco, with the Indy 500, with the Coca-Cola 600. NASCAR, there's drivers that race 2 out of those 3 races in the same day. We have Kyle Larson, who's racing in the Indianapolis 500 and then taking a helicopter flying up to go race at the Coca-Cola 600. So it's going to be an interesting weekend for race fans overall. Like my dad said in the chat, great racing weekend. So it's definitely one of those days. I took, I got the day off. I'm going to be sitting in front of my TV from 9 a.m. until basically 10 p.m. at night, just watching great racing throughout the entire day. So it's one of those weekends that I look forward to every single year, where we get to see a full day's worth of racing from 9 a.m. like we said with this race, all the way throughout the entire weekend going into IndyCar and into NASCAR. So it should be fun. And the fact of the matter is that we also have the Formula One tie-in with Prema, with Robert Schwartzman, who we all assume is going to be a Formula One driver pretty soon. Going out there and performing so well, it's going to be really interesting. We don't see a lot of Formula One guys go over there and do super well. Fernando Alonso has tried for many years to go out and win the Indianapolis 500. He has yet to. I think he came the highest was like top 10 that he got in or something like that. So it's tough for him. And then you got this kid coming out, 23 years old, I think it is, or 25 years old, Robert Schwartzman, something like that, and qualified number 1 with Pato O'Ward, with Remus VK, with Scott Dixon, all these guys that all these IndyCar guys know are great drivers. You see him go out there and outperform them. So it's going to be a great weekend overall.
Yep, definitely check it out. Sunday is a great day to sit on your ass and watch racing all day. So
for sure,
definitely check that out. We'll be back next week. Review Monaco. And it's part of a triple header, right? There's another.
Yeah.
What's the one after that? Is it Spain?
I think so. I'm not positive.
Let me double check here. Yeah, it is Spain. So next week we'll be back. We'll review Monaco. We'll see if there's overtakes or how the pit stop thing works, and maybe we'll revisit Evan's time trial idea, and then we'll definitely talk about Spain as well. Yep. Thanks everyone in the chat. Thanks Evan for joining me, and see you next week.
All right, bye.